Welcome, everyone, to our session today. We are so excited to be able to have this opportunity to bring such an important issue to the Arizona Self-Advocacy Conference this year. And I'll introduce myself so you know why I'm here, because I don't live in Arizona. I live in Texas, but James Metters, we both are in Texas, and we've been working with the Arizona Sexual Violence and Disability Network for over a year now. And so we also work with Juliana on this topic within the network. And as part of our plan to really get the word out about sexual violence, we are going to as many conferences as we can to talk about the work that the Arizona Sexual Violence and Disability Network is doing. So that's why we're here today. And I will go ahead and just Juliana and James, if you can just say a word or two. I know Juliana, probably everyone knows you, but if you just want to say hi, since everyone can introduce themselves.
James, go first.
I'm James Smithers. I'm from San Antonio, Texas, and I've been a sexual assault survivor multiple times in my life, but I'm excited to be here. And I hope you guys enjoyed this topic because it's important and also to help you guys have the power to stand up for yourself.
Thank you,
Thanks,
James.
James.
Yes. And my name is Juliana Juarena, and I live here in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm a native of Arizona. I've been here all my life, and I am glad that we have this information to you to make sure that you have knowledge about what's going on in Arizona.
And I actually did add Jason Sneed's name because I saw that he's at the conference today. And he is also a part of the network. He oversees our work group on criminal justice, but I saw that he has to help out in another session. So he wasn't able to join us, but I did want to add his name because I want everyone to know that he has been working really hard in his own work group in the network. And I'll mention a little bit about what they do later. Um, so I'm Leanne, and I work with the ARC of the United States, which is in DC, but I work from a home office in Texas. And I've been working in criminal justice issues for 27 years through the ARC. And James and I met real early on and realized that we both were very motivated to make a change in this area. So we've been working together ever since. So that's a little bit about me. We do have a small group today. So we do have I'm trying to think of how to do this because we have quite a bit to cover. But if you do have questions or you want to raise your hand or put something in the chat, feel free to do that. We'll get through some of the key issues, but we also will be providing questions to you throughout. So because we're a small group, feel free to turn on your camera and or not, whatever you want to do, or put your responses in the chat or come off mute and let us know what you think. Because what we're trying to talk about today are solutions, and we'd love to get your input. All of this will go back to the network as we're trying to figure out how do we address this really big problem that's happening in Arizona. So we're here to get ideas from you. So please be ready to, talk to us if you can and let us know or put in the chat your ideas. But we do want to start off just by acknowledging that this is a hard topic and that we need a safe space to talk about this in. Many of us have experienced some type of sexual abuse or violence in different ways. Please know you are not alone in that. But we're not going to share stories today, our own stories. What we want to do is talk about solutions. Take a break if you need to. Feel free to step away. And then if you do need help or you need someone to talk to about this, please let us know after the session, and we will be happy to find someone you can talk to. This is a hard topic, and we want to make sure everyone gets the help they need. So, James, I wanted to start with you because one of the things that you and I've talked about a lot is how you decided to start focusing on this issue. You've done a lot in self-advocacy for many years throughout the country in different states. But can you just tell us a little bit about your journey from victim to becoming a national advocate on sexual violence prevention?
Sure, Leanne. I decided to go to Wyoming. Probably people think it's weird that I'm going to Wyoming. How Wyoming related what I'm talking about today? I decided to take a trip for myself, doing some major soul searching, and I did it like a personal retreat. And I look at myself, I think about the things I've been doing in the self advocacy movement was good work and it was great. But I felt something was missing in my life. And I was thinking about it. And I talked to my friend Leanne and talk about I want to do something different because in the self advocacy movement, sometimes we need new blood to be part of the movement. Because if you keep the same faces all the time, sometimes the movement fall apart. And I decided to devote my life talk about sexual assault because not a lot of people was talking about it, especially men with disabilities, because 1 out of 6 men do not talk about sexual assault issues. And I felt like it's important, and I just like take the ball and run it. And that changed my life forever because this is the first time a lot more people know who I was as a sexual assault survivor, and also realize that that voice been missing a long time, and we need to help others to find their voices as a survivor of sexual assault.
Thank you, James. And I think it's a great example of how self-advocacy, like learning just the foundational principles, like the key um, ideas around self-advocacy, really helped you learn how to take that into a specific area. So some people might want to do employment. Some people are passionate about a lot of different areas in self-advocacy, but for you, it was sexual violence prevention and all the way up to the President's Committee on Intellectual Disabilities. Now that you're going to be having what you said your first meeting on Monday.
Yes.
So I really think it's so great to see that kind of how you grew into that over many years and really found your voice in this area. So
Yeah.
thank you for all of your work in that. Um, I thought maybe you can mention some of your key kind of activities that you did in really bringing out this issue over the past few years, starting with the NPR series.
Sure. One of the turning points of my career as a excuse me, one of my turning points as my career was that Joe Shapiro, a guy who's a reporter for National Public Radio, he did a book a long time ago called No Pity, and he was myself and some others like Leanne tried to convince him to do a story about sexual assault issues, and he finally budged himself to do a story. And probably you know me, but also David Robertson. She's from Pennsylvania. Talk about her experience and really talk about, as survivors, about what happened to our story, our lives and stuff, because it was hard at first to talk about it. But with years and my years' experience helped me to gain more confidence myself. And now I'm a strong leader about this movement, because I want you guys to know that I'm not, I know people look at me as a victim, but instead I'm a fighter for fight for what is right for us who've been harmed by sexual assault issues.
And I think another good thing to bring out is what's said on this slide here, that the rate of sexual assault against people with intellectual disability is more than 7 times the rate against people without disability. And that research, that study actually looks specifically at people with intellectual disability. And a lot of times we don't get that kind of data. So we were very glad that when this NPR story happened, the reporter, Joe Shapiro, went to the Bureau of Justice Statistics and specifically asked that they look at this data. And they came up with this number. So we've really been using that to help educate people about how common sexual violence is for people with intellectual disability. And then, James, did you just want to mention some of the work you've done in Texas, working to train law enforcement?
Sure. One of the things I was partnered with Leanne about was partner with Pathways to Justices, is teaching law enforcement how to help and support people with disabilities, because oftentimes police officers or even police officers need training how to help people with IDD, because of because some of them may misunderstood us or think we are difficult, but really they need some education how to support a person with IDD when they have to deal with a person with a disability, especially people with disabilities. And we
And
train them. Oh, sorry, Leah.
go ahead, James. Sorry.
And also help officers how to be more understandable about us and what the needs and accommodation we need when we talk to a police officer, because sometimes people misinterpret what we need or don't need. And this was Pathway of Justice, because I know the last several, the last decade, some of the officers have misinterpreted people with IDD, and now we have a pathway justice to teach law enforcement how to support us in a different way, but not use excessive force. Instead, talking to the person or their caregiver if the caregiver is with that person.
Yeah, and what's been really helpful is this training has people with disabilities as co-trainers whenever a training is provided. And we have a specific module for victim advocates. So they learn how to talk to a crime victim with disabilities, how to make sure that they are provided accommodations. So this is a key way that we can be advocating on this issue too. And then, James, I know you mentioned 1 in 6, but here's the slide that talks about the fact that 1 in 6 men, and that's not men with disabilities, that's all men in
Yeah.
the US have been sexually assaulted, and just how common that is. And yet people don't really think about that as much as maybe women being sexually assaulted. And do you want to just talk about how you were invited to go to
Yeah,
California
sure.
and be in the PSA?
Sure. Leanne been trying to educate person who was running by 1 in 6, Leanne was trying to educate the guy who was the executive director. Said one thing is missing is men with disability, and she suggests my name to do that. But the cool part of the 1 in 6 video was all 6 men, not one age or one group of men, but all different backgrounds, from a person who's a young adult age to a person who was in the military. And that was pretty cool. During the video shoot, they had 6 females reading the story about the person who was sexually assaulted. They did not know it was a female or a male survivor because no one told them ahead of time. And the cool part was when I'm walking around the corner, cool part was that when I walk around to meet that person, this is the first time she met me, even the 5 other men, because no one knew each other beforehand until we went to around the corner.
And if anyone ever provides trainings on sexual violence issues, this is free and easy to get off of YouTube, and it is a great resource. It is very emotional, I will say, um, because the women were like the woman that you see that's shaking James's hand. There's a picture we're seeing right now of a woman shaking the hand of James. Um, like James was talking about, when the women read the stories about these different sexual assault stories, they just assumed it was another woman. And then, so when a man comes out and they see it's a man and they had never even read this story before, it was very emotional for these individuals. And it just helps us realize the bias that we all can have about who could be a sexual assault victim. So it's really important that in any kind of videos like this, we think about, are we including people with disabilities? And so it was exciting that this was an opportunity to have a person with a disability in a mainstream public service announcement for, a sexual assault organization. It was a big deal, and they still continue to use it today.
And over 4 million people liked that video on their page. And if you're on Facebook, you could look it up on Facebook to have a Facebook posted too. And that was one of the big turning point of my career, because that was one of the first, how I could say, public talk about it. And
Mm-hmm.
after that, this when Joe Shapiro came up and talked to me more about it, and doors were starting to open for me to take people taking me serious as a sexual assault survivor. But also at the same time, we a big turning point for all people who've been hurt by sexual assault, because it was part of the Me Too movement, and also when during the challenging times with the Penn State football team scandal.
Good point. And now we're looking for ways to keep that conversation going. I don't know why it's not moving. Speaking of that, there we go. So all of that is background to introduce you to why Juliana, James, and I are all working together now. And that is to bring this topic to Arizona in a very big way. And so welcome to the Arizona Sexual Violence and Disability Network. We just want to tell you a little bit about ourselves, what we've been doing the past year or so, and how you can get involved. And we would love for you to get involved. We're definitely looking for folks who want to help out. So the mission is to identify and respond to the needs of people with IDD and other disabilities who are really facing the greatest risk of sexual violence in Arizona. And as we're thinking about that mission, we had a question that first I'll pose to Juliana and James, and then we'd like to hear from you too. So the question is, what do you think is important? Why do you think it's important to talk about sexual violence, just in general? Why do we need to even talk about it? So Juliana, we want to start with you?
Yes, yes. So I thought about this question, and this is what I came up with, that people shouldn't feel like they have to keep this a secret. There are people that they can talk to that can help them. So we want to put that message out there, especially to the population here in Arizona. We have a large number of Hispanic families and other people of color. So yes, we want to
Yeah.
make sure that, especially because of the culture and
Mhm.
what people would say or can't say, I think it's important for the message to be that, yeah, don't keep it a secret.
Absolutely, Juliana. And when this can happen to people, the person who's doing that to them will often say it's a secret and just try to hide it. So if they don't know that it's okay, like to say something about it, then they're going to be afraid to speak or to communicate in whatever way they communicate to let others know. So that's a really good point, and I'm so glad you raised it, that secrets are sometimes meant to be broken when it's about your safety and your well-being, right? So really helping people with disabilities understand that and know that they can speak out. So that's great. Thank you so much. And James, what do you think? Why do you think it's important that we talk about this?
If you don't speak, then you cannot help yourself to be able to recover from your own sexual assault experience. As a person, like I said earlier, I'm a sexual assault survivor. But before that, from my last one, I always use lighting, a lighting term, because lighting does happen. Because that, like the old saying, lighting would never hit you twice or three times at the same spot. I remember when I was very young, when I was in high school, when I was between 15 and 17 years old, that a group of girls gang raped me, and I was feel too ashamed to tell anyone because I felt guilty because I thought I was the guilty person because I'm a guy and the people were girls. But years later, after my last assault, I think it's important to talk about it. Like Leanne said earlier, my self advocacy skills helped me to be the leader today to talk about it because now I realize I'm not alone. Why it's important to talk about it is helping others to be aspire to be a leader of this movement because I believe this is another movement, part of the self advocacy movement to help us to help our peers to talk about that experience and also feel valued and be a valuable part of this important issue to talk about your own experience, but also help others like yourself to talk about their experience as a sexual assault survivor.
Yeah, that's such a great point. If we don't talk about it, then how are we going to get help? And trauma is very real, right? The effects of trauma can be um, long term. And if we're not able to, I don't know if you know the word process, think through what happened and get help to realize it wasn't my fault, that I didn't do anything wrong, that I didn't ask for this. We have to really think through all that and talk through all that to know that we can get healthy. and to know that that doesn't define who we are today. So all of that is real important. Those are big key pieces of the solutions that we want to get to help people get healthy. So that is both great answers. And I just wanted to see, so let me see, Jesse Lee, Brandy, Marianne, do any of you want to share about why you think it's important that we talk about this topic in Arizona?
I can address that issue. I've been working with people with disabilities over 40 years, and this issue is not something that is ever spoken about. And I really feel it's, just an unheard issue that it's never been comfortable to speak about. And you're right, the only way to heal is to get information about how to protect yourself, how to recognize it, and as providing care for people with disabilities. It's really important for me to teach the caregivers and the people around the people with disabilities that we're providing support to recognize signs and to act on those so that we can all be part of the healing and growth in those areas. It's just an issue that has not been addressed, and I feel very strongly about the need to do that.
Thank you so much, Marianne. Thank you for being in this group today, and thank you for voicing that. And that's exactly why this network was created, because of a case that happened in Arizona that really got everyone's attention, that this is going on and that we have to be addressing it. And we need folks like you to help us. So please, we should connect afterwards to make sure that that we can get as many people involved in this work as possible.
Yes, I really want to follow up and see what kinds of resources we can get together and provide. So thank you for being here and talking about this. And James, thank you so much. And I admire your bravery because you are so brave and so well spoken, and truly, really appreciate you being here.
Thanks.
And just want to give a chance, if anyone else wants to unmute, feel free to do so. If you want to share why you think it's important that we talk about this, just want to make sure I give you some time to respond, or you can put it in the chat. Either way. Just making sure I'm checking the chat.
I see something with Jocelyn Kevin. Want me to read it?
Yeah, can you read it, James?
Yeah, our agree is so hush-hush, and no one wants to talk about it. I had a few customers going through this now.
And then thank you everyone for this breakout session. Thank you so much for that. We have to find a way to make it easier for all of us to talk about this. And your ideas today, we're going to take back to the network, to any ideas that you have to share, anything we can share with you. That's the whole point of today's session. So thank you for the chats, and thank you for unmuting and just having this discussion with us. We do have a couple more questions, and Juliana, I'm going to ask you to make sure I'm staying on time. Okay, so far so good. There we go. So here's the vision of the network. Our vision is that the Arizonans will live by a collective belief that everyone has value and deserves to live a life free from sexual violence. Now, we know that we've got to make sure that everyone is represented in this vision. And when the network started out, it was called a collaborative, and it wasn't as diverse as we wanted. And so this past year, we've really focused on how do we bring more diversity to this issue. And we've really made some good grounds in reaching out and working with tribal communities, which, as you know, have a very high rate of sexual violence. this is often intergenerational. It's going from one family to the next. And so we have already done a presentation at their conference this year, and we're working very closely with SWIC, the Southwest Indigenous Coalition, I believe it is, and their whole focus is to educate about domestic and sexual violence. But they don't necessarily talk about disability issues. So we're trying to bring in that with them. So we've been very excited about doing some of that work. And so our question today, and Juliana, we'll start with you again. We are developing tools and publications about sexual violence. So what kinds of things would you like to see us create or do around this topic?
So I know sometimes we want to focus on the youth because they may be missed on some of this messaging. So one of the things that I have suggested is creating a social media plan and making sure that there's posts about what people can do, throw in some statistics, some good information for people to connect with. Maybe doing some short videos like 30 seconds to 1 minute, just any way to put the message out about the situations and making sure that people know who to contact.
That's a great idea. I love that. And we did do just a very short video that's on our website now, and we'll hopefully get a chance for me to share my screen to show you the website. But just a short one of James speaking at one of the conventions about the network, and then the tribal community leaders speaking out on it. So we've got two of those right now. I see Jesse Lee, you have your hand up.
Yes, I'm wondering, do you guys do like support groups for this?
We do not, the network itself doesn't, but we work with people who are holding support groups online. I believe it's online. It's is it ACES DV? I can get you in contact with the person that's doing that, Juliana. Not Juliana. I'm looking at you, Juliana. That's why I said your name. Kiana. There we go. Kiana, who is with, no, it's not, it's oh my goodness. It's one of our organizations that's in the network. It's not Ability
No,
360.
it's Bloom 365.
Thank you. There it is. Bloom 365 is actually holding support groups right now. So if that's something you're interested in, we can provide you that information. That's a great question. They
That would
recently
be
got
great.
funding to do that, and I thought, what a great resource, because that's not always available. So we'll have to follow up with you on that. Great question. That's a great tool right there. Sorry, every time I talk, you come off mute. Go ahead.
It's okay. I was just gonna say thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, James, what do you think? Any tools, publications? What would you like to see the network do?
I think also it's important we need to create the tools of individual groups, not by one way of thinking. We need to make it more accessible to all people, for people with disabilities, but also help those professionals who are helping people with IDD, like in the Native American community or the Hispanic community, because people think it's one simple language thing, but we need to make it accessible for all people because that is missing. And I feel very strongly we need to make it accessible and easy to talk about who've been hurt by sexual assault, but also help those who are parents or guardians and even the professionals who work in the field to make this easy and simple and not make the person feel overwhelmed. I don't understand what this brochure say or what this say, but make it more creative, people friendly to help
Yeah.
people to be understanding about this issue And during the same time, don't have a guilt trip against the family member or the person they need help and support. Because if we do that, it makes the person be more less empowerment of themselves to share their story. And that's just important, be across accessibility. People think accessibility is only curb cups and bathrooms, but also language we use and to help us to understand more about it.
Great point, James. And I think that actually leads us into the next one pretty well because we also have values as a network. And look at that. Number one, accessibility. And we talk about how do we make sure our meetings, all of our spaces, and anything we create. So if it is a brochure, is it in plain language? If you go to a rape crisis center, for example, there may be things people with intellectual disability can't read, can't understand. Nobody offers any support around that. So we're thinking about how do we make sure in Arizona, if someone needs help at a rape crisis center, they can get it. And not only that, but like hotlines. One of our work groups are talking about how do we make sure a hotline is accessible so people can get either make a phone call or they can get in a chat room with the hotline and feel like they are understood and feel like they can talk about what's happening. So we're thinking about that. And then diversity and intersectionality. Um, intersectionality, kind of a big word, which just means people have all kinds of different identities in one person. And we're not just one thing, we're many things. Even if we don't look like we're many things, you can't judge people based on what they look like. And we need to, when we're thinking about how to outreach to survivors, to victims, that we do so in a way that we keep all that in mind. Different cultures. We're looking at outreach to the LGBTQ community within Arizona, making sure that we're not leaving anyone out when we think about this topic. And then a key value is really the leadership of people with disabilities in doing this work. So, what do we need to do to provide that support so people can, James, like you do already, and now you're part time doing this work, really find avenues, ways that they can do this part time, full time, not to get paid to do this kind of work so that they can lead the movement. That's a huge kind of value that we have, James and I have created together over the years. And of course, that in the disability, in the self advocacy movement, that's got to be priority so that we can have sustainability, which means we can do this for a long time. And it's hard to do that without pay.
I think the other thing is important, and when the person discloses, I always share my story. But the main thing of the presentation today is also you need to respect the person's time and moment when they decide to disclose. For me, it took me for several years to do that
Yeah.
because I remember my last assault in 2004 took me like 3 years to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But with 3 years to like 3 years ago to 3 years to do nationally issues about that. But you need to respect the person's boundaries. If they want to share to the world, it's okay to share to the world. But at the same time, if they're not ready, don't rush it through. They will find the right moment to speak out about this issue.
That is a great key message. And James, you keep doing this somehow. You're reading my mind. That every
Okay.
time I'm about to say something, you like,
I'm sorry.
I love, no, it's a good thing. I love that. I love that. That's what happens when you work together for many years. You
Uh-huh.
start thinking each other's thoughts beforehand. So the next question, along with that vision that we talked about, is what key messages do we need to have to reach out to people from different backgrounds and communities? And James, one of the ones you just said is that people can disclose and talk about it when they're ready. And you don't need to rush that, right? Like give people time and space to do that. And then Juliana, did you have any kind of key message to add? No? Okay. Anyone else want to make a comment about key messages that we might want to think about, especially specific communities within the disability community? Just given. I don't see anything in the chat, but Juliana, just keep an eye on that just in case. Okay, well, we will move on to the next slide then. I wanted to mention the different groups that we have. Juliana is working with Gina Griffiths on the training and prevention work group. And then James is co-leading the trauma-informed care access work group with Josette. And then I mentioned Jason, who's in the meeting today in a different breakout. He's doing the criminal justice work. And Juliana, do you just want to give a couple of points on what you're doing in the training and prevention work group?
Yes, so a couple of years ago, we had been collecting resources available here in Arizona and some that were national that could be used here in Arizona and made them accessible for people with disabilities in Arizona. And so then from there, we have a list of resources. And so now we're just looking to see what else are we missing. And once we do that, I think the next phase would be to go out into the community and do some of the presentations and sharing the resources.
Thank you. And there is another work group just on school abuse prevention, and they're also looking at training. So there is some crossover between these work groups and they can work together too. So I should mention that. But if this is something you're interested in, would like to be a part of, let us know. There are different work groups and you can kind of listen to what each one is doing to get a feel for what you might be interested in. Another one is the trauma-informed care access. And James, this is the one you're co-leading with Josette. And I wondered if you could just talk a little bit about the APS, the Adult Protective Services point.
Sure. Oftentimes, it's a struggle to report what happened to a person with IDD because we know this in other parts of the country, and also we try to educate adult protective services, take it serious when someone discloses if they've been harmed by sexual assault. Sometimes they fall into between the cracks, and now we want to get APS persons to listen to us and to believe what happened to us.
Yeah, so that's one of the key things that the trauma informed care is working on is how to make sure APS staff have trauma informed care and they do provide support to people with disabilities because what we've seen is that the focus may be on the elderly population and not as much on people with disabilities. So how do we really raise awareness and training for them specifically? And I had mentioned the hotlines, and that's something else. James, have y'all talked about that recently in one of your work groups?
Yes, we are trying to get a hotline number available if a person who needs to call someone like the Red Crisis Center in their town and their community to ask for help when someone been hurt by sexual assault and to help them to get the support they needed when they called the hotline number, because the hotline could be just help them be the smoke detector and to help the person to guide to where they need to go to, especially sexual assault nurses out in their community who've been hurt by sexual assault, and they could point them the right direction in their small town or even a big city like Tucson or Phoenix.
Yeah, that's a big need. And they're talking about using, what is it called? Like a script when you call a
Mm.
hotline and what people need to be saying to ensure that they're including people with disabilities that may need certain support or an accommodation. So that's
And
something that that group is looking at.
and also one of the things, other thing is important is try to make the hotline available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because you never know if you need help or support. Because if it was like 12 o'clock at night, and if you have a flashback or something happened to you, you could call them to ask for help because they don't take holidays. They'll be available to assist you and help you to go to places you need to get the help you needed.
Yeah, thank you, James. And then the last one that I'll mention today is the Criminal Justice Work Group. And this one is led by Jason Sneed, who is, like you probably saw, is in the meeting today. And then Asim Dietrich, who's with the Arizona Center for Disability Law. And they're really looking at how to help crime victims in the criminal justice system itself. Um, and anywhere from first contact with that police officer to making sure people know how to interview crime victims with disabilities and how they need support when they go to court. So they're looking at kind of that side of it. And then our newest work group is the Tribal Resources Work Group. As I mentioned, this has been some of the really exciting work this year. Dr. Kimberly Yellowrobe, who's with Banner Health, has taken on this work group and really brought in some new folks in Arizona who are doing this work through the SWIC that I mentioned, the Southwest Indigenous Coalition. And so that's really creating a whole new world of us to do outreach with. So we're very excited about that. And if you want any of the information on these work groups, we have a strategic plan that actually lists all of our goals and objectives for everything. It's on our website. And the information about the conference, this is our first ever conference that we're doing. It will be at Ability 360 in Phoenix, and it's on September 14th. We haven't sent out a link yet to register, but we will be sending that out. And we'll work with Juliana as well to make sure it gets to all the self-advocacy groups. There will be scholarships for persons with disabilities. So please come. We're looking at to have maybe like 100 people. We have a keynote with James Metters and Shirley Paisley, who's a nationally known author who speaks on this issue, very well known in the field. And she'll be giving away her book for free on this topic at that conference. So please come get your free book. Let us know if you're interested in that, and we'll be happy to make sure you get more information. So what are some final thoughts, Juliana and James? Any final thoughts?
Well, Mr. Juliana, you.
Okay, I just say stay informed and subscribe to the website.
Which I'll show you. Should I show you now, or James, you want to finish your thought and then I'll go back to the website?
Sure. I hope you know this conference could be helpful for people with IGD, but the main also we need you as support workers, agency people, or agency heads to come to this conference to help people because you guys are the eyes and ears of the person you're helping to get the services they need when they have to disclose what happened to them. I know me, Leanne, or Juliana could do that, but you guys is out and about in your community and to help people to recover from their experience sexual assault. I know we'd be there in September, but we want to encourage you to attend too because without your guys' help, you can help the person to recover and also not feel guilty what happened to them.
And James, I had to put up your final slide.
Oh gosh. I don't know how I got that. I still don't know how I got that quote that day.
I love this quote. If you be quiet, you cannot change things, but if you have a voice, you can change the world. And I know you mean by if you have a way to communicate at all. It doesn't mean like you have to be talking. We can find ways for anyone who needs to let someone know about sexual violence. We need to make sure we have the tools and the path for them to do that. So that is our goal. I'll stop share and see if I can bring up the website quickly so you can see that. I do have it up, but I have several.
And then we'll have to end our conversation with this group.
Yes. How do we have time to do it?
No.
Well, that's okay. When you get a chance, please go to the website. And I was just going to mention that we have the whole strategic plan on there. Lots of materials are on that website, so feel free to check that out.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll look forward in hearing from you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.